How we doing, everyone? I'm joined here today by Jonathan Johnson, right? French football specialist, as we are going to call him, because we are here to talk about Enzo Le Fee. Now, this is a player who quite a lot of United fans have been asking me to look at in more detail. So I thought, who better to speak to than Jonathan to find out a little bit more about his season so far at Lorient, the development that he's been having in the French league, whether or not he's ready for that move up to the Premier League, to Manchester United. Could he be an alternative to Frenkie de Jong, or are they different types of players? Hopefully, these are sorts of things that Jonathan can help me with today. Jonathan, really appreciate your time here today, man.
Hi there. Thanks a lot for having me on. Yeah, it's a pleasure and looking forward to chatting.
Well, Enzo Le Fee, if we're looking at Lorient's season overall, right, they're just above Lyon in the table, aren't they? Is their season, is it sort of abnormally good, or is this kind of where they are normally at this time every single season?
I mean, sort of what's been the norm recently, I guess, has been battling against relegation. So to be sort of out of that discussion at this moment in time is a good thing. I'd say sort of what they were going through at the beginning of the season when they were sort of up there and thereabouts with the pace setters, that is, sort of certainly above, sort of average. But, I think Lorient have done enough over the years to sort of establish themselves as a club that's worthy of having a place in Ligue 1. Obviously, Ligue 1 has more relegation places than usual this season because the league's cutting down from 20 to 18 across both professional top tiers. Lorient have sort of carved themselves out a reputation of being sort of quite a solid team, difficult to go and play against because of their stadium and the pitch, but also, a team that brings through a fairly decent number of talented youngsters, either via the academy or via players that they scout intelligently, bring in, add value to, and then sell on. So, they're a bit of a known quantity now in Ligue 1, but generally speaking, it's been quite a positive season certainly up until the beginning of 2023. Things sort of hit hit a bumpy patch when not the takeover, but the sort of part acquisition of the club by Bournemouth's owner Foley, was announced. That's not gone down well with the Lorient fans at all. And there's this fear now that they become sort of this feeder club to Bournemouth, at least as long as Bournemouth are in the Premier League. We've already seen Ouattara, leave and start to enjoy success quite quickly in the Premier League with them. And I think many people earmarked, Le Fee to do something similar. But, obviously we're here chatting about him. So that means that Bournemouth aren't the only club that are interested in him.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the man himself, because this is somebody who's, if I'm correct, he's come through the Lorient Academy and he's sort of grown and developed into this role. Is this season in isolation? If we're talking about Le Fee, is this really where he's sort of burst into the Lorient first team? And he's been there for a few years, but is this really where you feel he's developed this season into the sort of the player that we're discussing now?
No, I mean, I think for those people like myself who have been following, French football for years now, we've known about Le Fee, we've known, his quality, his potential for a couple of years now. I'd say that he's probably, cropped up on a few more radars than he had done in the past, this season. But that's not to say that he hadn't sort of been earmarked by a number of, those who sort of know Ligue 1 best. Over sort of the last 2 to 3 years, but obviously with what was going on at Lorient at the beginning of the season, that unexpectedly good form, the fact that their new coach is somebody who knows the youth academy inside out. It's not a surprise that Le Fee suddenly came to the fore, with that, playing for somebody who knows his game inside and out, having worked with him for years before making the step up to senior level.
In terms of Le Fee's playing style, because I think this is going to be the interesting one, because effectively what Manchester United, what Erik Ten Hag would love to do as a manager is sign Frenkie de Jong. That's it. That's the midfielder he feels is missing from this current setup that we've got. And de Jong, as you obviously know, is that deeper lying, progressive playmaker who receives the ball from defence and is brilliant at carrying it up the pitch. What sort of role has Enzo had this season at Lorient? Is he more somebody who's likely to receive the ball off the defence, or is he far more likely to be that man who brings it across the midfield towards the attack? Because if we took a look at the and we tried to compare the sort of pizza charts here. 1 second, there is it. That I can't remember how to do this. Where's my screen gone? That one there. There we go. Got it in the end. if we're looking at how they are comparing as players, there's quite a lot of similarities. Sort of a striking difference, I would say, is the passing percentage. Frenkie de Jong is a 94%. He really does keep the ball and find his teammates. Is Enzo a little bit more erratic with his passes? What sort of midfielder would you describe him as?
I wouldn't say necessarily that he's more erratic. I mean, I certainly think that Le Fee is somebody who probably has a bit more versatility than somebody like Frenkie de Jong, whereas Frenkie de Jong's game is based, almost exclusively through, the fantastic technique that he's had from, a second to none footballing education that you get coming through the ranks, with the likes of Ajax. Le Fee is somebody who's learned to play a number of different roles. So obviously, while he does have that sort of loose positioning in the center of midfield, he does sort of like to take more of a step towards, the attack and, to look to try and, either play in teammates or go for goal himself. He's also got quite a tenacious side. So I'd say that physically he sort of gets himself more involved than De Jong as well. But, equally, I think we're talking about two sort of players who are, they're kind of in that, Marco Verratti role where De Jong, certainly has the technique, to sort of complement a Verratti, but doesn't get himself involved maybe physically as much. Whereas Le Fee, I would say, is maybe a cut below sort of De Jong and Verratti. Certainly has the ability to, to sort of improve on that aspect, but maybe gets himself more involved physically than the likes of a De Jong does.
In terms of his development, so he's 23 now, so obviously he's got he's got his whole career ahead of himself. At what point would you say he's at now? Would you say that the idea of a jump to Bournemouth would be one that kind of fit where he currently is, or would you say that you'd have confidence that he would be able to make a jump up to someone like Manchester United if we were to come calling?
No, honestly, I think a move from the likes of Lorient to United would be too big a jump too soon. I'm not saying that he wouldn't be capable of that at some point in his career, but I do think the most logical move for him is to move somewhere, say, a club a bit further down the Premier League ladder, develop himself in the Premier League, further his game, and then potentially make a move, to a giant on the scale of a United. I mean, I'm not saying it would be impossible that, it would sort of work out. I mean, if United were to buy him now and then, say, loan him somewhere for a season or two in the Premier League to gain that kind of experience, then, yeah, that's a possibility. But I think the interesting thing about the link with Bournemouth is that obviously, given the link between Lorient and Bournemouth, there is a bit of pressure for Le Fee to make that move. But my understanding is that Le Fee doesn't want to make that move. Sort of when he says that no contract extension offer has been forthcoming from Lorient, it's not entirely true. They have been keen to tie him down for some time, but I think Le Fee kind of sees through, what that pipeline is like between Lorient and Bournemouth, and knows that there'd be an expectation that he would sort of follow the same route as Ouattara did in January. And to be quite honest about it, and I agree with him here. I think he thinks that he's better than moving to a club like Bournemouth, and that I would agree with. I think if you're looking at sort of good fits, I think you're probably talking kind of, your Brentfords, that kind of stuff. I think would be a good match for somebody like Le Fee, where he's at this moment in time in his development, and ultimately, I think that would probably be best for his game as well. I wouldn't rule out him staying in Ligue 1 and moving to a club, that can potentially offer him, European experience. That is definitely something that I think could benefit him. But I think, he's probably learned as much as he can at Lorient. I don't think that moving to Bournemouth, aside from potentially being exposed to the Premier League, assuming that Bournemouth stay up, I don't think there's too much else, to sort of interest him outside of that. Hence why, he's so sort of keen to use his current situation to his advantage this summer and try and get a move away from Lorient, because they can't afford to not cash in on him, given the quality of the player that they've managed to produce in their youth academy. But equally, that time is now running out, and the fact that he's been so clear about not wanting to extend his contract says a lot about the fact that he wouldn't want to sort of be pushed into making that move to Bournemouth.
What would you say is a reasonable market valuation of Enzo Le Fee that you believe that Lorient, as you say, if this is a summer where they do cash in, whether it goes to Manchester United or not, it's kind of irrelevant. What would you say his realistic valuation is in the current market?
I mean, I think when you factor in his contract, the probability that Lorient won't be playing European football next season, and sort of what they managed to extract for Ouattara at the beginning of this, link between Lorient and Bournemouth. I think realistically, you're probably talking somewhere between 10 to 15 million being very good business for Lorient, because at the end of the day, as soon as that summer transfer window shuts, there is no hope, or at least based on his recent quotes, there's no hope that there will be, a contract extension sort of between the first part of next season and the January transfer window, which means that he'll be free, after that. So I think realistically, anything above 10 million and sort of in that 10 to 15 million range should be considered good business for Lorient, given that the player's mind is made up.
And if I can ask you sort of like a final question, in terms of the positives of his game, you spoke about them there, and the idea that he likes to bring the ball forward. He's got that Verratti tenacious element to his game. What would you say are the sort of the areas of weakness that you feel he needs to develop over the next couple of years to sort of really grow in, if he is going to try and close that gap between, say, Verratti and De Jong is where he's aiming towards? What does he need to improve on?
I mean, there's a lot of sort of very specific things that he will have grown accustomed to playing at Lorient. One of them is the surface of the pitch. It's well known that it's a pretty tricky surface to play on because it's largely synthetic. So I think going to a league where you're going to be mainly playing on proper natural grass pitches, that's obviously going to do something to his game, and it's something that he will have to adapt to. I'm not saying that he doesn't play on those surfaces most weeks in Ligue 1. Obviously, there are a lot of clubs in France that do, offer those kind of proper, playing surfaces. But the fact is, when he's playing at home with Lorient, it's completely different, and it impacts many players' games, differently. He is a very, technical player, like I said. Likes to get forward, has an eye for goal. And I think realistically, projecting towards a move to the Premier League, which is why we're having this conversation, I do think that there will have to be an element of sort of adapting to sort of the physical rigors of Premier League football. Because when players come from France, generally, they tend to have had a higher emphasis on the tactical aspects of the game than they have, on anything else. Physically, I think Ligue 1 does prepare you quite well for the Premier League, better than sort of many other leagues at sort of a similar level. But I think if we were talking about how he'd fit into a Ten Hag system, I think something that Ten Hag would love about him is the fact that he would be very switched on tactically. But equally, I think it would still be a massive, massive leap. So, if United were to make a move for him, to me, logically, it would be better to have a look at him in pre-season, see where he's at, and then loan him out, to a club. Certainly a club that has a need, for somebody like him who can add that bit of creativity, but that tenacious attitude as well in midfield, because I think realistically he's going to be in need of sort of like a halfway house, between sort of the level that you would need to be at to establish yourself at a top club, and then sort of making a step up from Lorient. So, whether he ends up being somebody like a Pelistri who is sort of badly in need of minutes on loan, or whether he's somebody who remains on the radar, moves somewhere else, and then potentially gets picked up in a couple of years' time. I guess we'll have to wait and see what the summer holds for him. But I do think there are some certain aspects of his game that he will have to adapt if and when he makes a move.
And so, as a final comment there, because to go back on what you said previously, you think that if you're looking at the Premier League, that maybe Brentford would be a good fit for where he is right now. In terms of how is he in terms of press resistance? Because that's quite an important part of the Premier League now. It's very, very, as soon as you play against the likes of Liverpool and City, the intensity is just on such a level that you don't have much time on the ball. How is he in terms of press resistance? Is he good with the ball at his feet? Is he good at finding space in those situations? Because I think that's the sort of player that United really quite desperately need.
I mean, he is very good, with the ball at his feet. I mean, sort of, I guess Verratti again is kind of like the master of having that kind of like Velcro touch where you can rarely get the ball away from them. I wouldn't say Le Fee is sort of on that same, kind of level, but he has that sort of, potential to be able to do it. And you look at sort of the way that he's able to maneuver the ball in tight spaces. It is very impressive, but it's a different kind of football. You don't have the same sort of pressing from a lot of clubs, here in France. So it's not something that he sees sort of week in, week out. So again, it brings me back to the point of sort of why he would need to go somewhere else potentially, where there's a bit less pressure, to immediately deliver. That way he can sort of adapt to it, because although, like I said before, the physicality of Ligue 1, won't be something that necessarily could potentially shock him in the Premier League. I think the pace of the game, sort of throughout an entire 90 minutes, that is something that can potentially, surprise, some players.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been really good to talk about it. I think I'm excited about the idea of him. The fact that you said 10 to 15 million there is strange, isn't it? When you think about modern day transfers and you hear a value, you're like, how can a player be that cheap? When you see Enzo Fernandez going for outrageous figures, but Man United, I think, with Tyrell Malacia was a very smart signing that we made last year from Feyenoord. That was in the region of 10 to 15 million. It's not just about signing 70, 80 million pound players. It's about building a genuine squad. And that's what we need. And he sounds like a player that could well, hypothetically, say if Scott McTominay was to leave, could kind of slot in that role. And that's something that maybe Scott doesn't have. But I really appreciate your time today. If you've got a shout out, Jonathan, where can people follow you to find out some more information on Enzo across the course of the season if they'd like to?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to sort of follow me and keep tabs with what's going on in Ligue 1, then follow me on Twitter, and that's at JON_Legosit. And that's sort of the best place to find all of my various bits and pieces on French football and beyond.
Wicked. Well, thank you very much for tuning in today. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for your time. And maybe in the goodness of the season, maybe we get linked with Enzo at a little bit more depth. Maybe we can have another conversation further down the line.
Sounds good, Sam. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Take it easy, dude.